Hey, welcome everyone to our Vercel Community live stream. My name is Jacob Harris, and I'm joined here with Amy Egan from the Vercel Community team. We're streaming this live out to X and YouTube, but if you want to participate in the chat, join us on community.vercel.com, click going on the event page, and that will unlock the chat. We'll be doing a lot of Q&A throughout this event, so drop any questions you have along the way.
And I just want to say a quick reminder, if you're going to be in the chat, just remember to be respectful and follow our code of conduct. You can find that on community.vercel.com. It's linked up in the top and down in the footer. And with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce our guests today, Seb, Ari, and Esteban. What do you have to show us today? Tell us a little about what you're here to show.
Hey everybody, pumped to be here. We are the V0 team. Esteban runs DevRel for us. Ari is the lead PM on V0, and then I'm the general manager. Ari is going to kick us off showing some awesome features the team has shipped just in the last few weeks here.
Yeah, good to see you guys. I'm going to show you guys quickly 2 or 3 new features that we've shipped over the last few weeks. And then I think we're going to open up for questions and answers and just to hopefully answer all your questions. So give me 1 second to share my screen. So here is this is actually one of the most interesting and exciting features I'm personally most excited for. We found basically that a lot of times when using V0, especially when doing things that are more design adjacent, there's a lot of times where you need to make small tweaks to the actual work generation that you have, but you don't want to wait or spend tokens to have AI go in and actually try to make that change, especially when it's something very, very specific. You can see here we have this relatively good looking kind of dashboard landing page setup with the obvious issue that this primary kind of CTA banner that we have is way too big and looks really, really bad. What you can now do is kind of click into any of the elements that you see on the screen, and that'll take you into what we call design mode. And design mode gives you deterministic Figma-like controls that actually let you modify individual styles and properties on individual elements on the screen. The easiest way to see that is okay, this definitely shouldn't be red. We should probably make this color, this should probably be white. We should probably also have this be white. I think this whole section is probably a little bit too big right now. And actually, we can actually set the color all the way at the top level here. I think we probably want a padding closer to, let's say 40 pixels on the X direction and probably something similar on the Y. Yeah, I think 40 pixels there probably looks good as well. And then you hit save, and suddenly you have these kind of changes reflected directly in your generation without ever needing to actually talk to AI, use any credits, or actually wait for a response. These are all purely deterministic changes that you can make, all using controls that hopefully you're very, very familiar with already. And this works for kind of most of the elements you see on the screen. And you can also do things like actually modify text. So things like, if we want to change this CTA to be something like, welcome to the V0 community session, or community ask me anything. You can do that right here. Again, do it completely deterministically. And it's way, way faster than kind of waiting for AI to respond for any kind of changes like this. So that's one huge change that has come out relatively recently. One change that's going to be coming out very, very soon is for people who are more familiar with code and still want to have kind of more granular control over the actual files that are getting edited. You can actually @mention individual files and have V0 only change those when you mention. So what that looks like is when you hit @ you actually get a list of the available files that are in this generation. And in this generation, we only have the 2. You can actually tag which one you want to chat with, and then start asking your questions. Or we can say something like, hey, let's change the layout of the recent apps cards. And this is a change that will only apply to the component that we've tagged here. The final thing that we'd love to show off is a beta for the new platform API that we've actually just released in beta yesterday. And so what the platform API does is actually, it's a very relatively unique thing. The platform API lets you essentially build your own V0. What we've built is an API that takes as input text and gives you as output an app. Not only is that app fully rendered and something that you can just run, we actually give you a V0 chat that backs in. So if you want, you can go into the chat and actually make modifications and changes. If you just want to use the app, we actually give you a URL that you can just use and host within your own application to show off kind of generations that are made. And what this lets you do is actually build really, really cool integrations with V0 directly. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second here and change tabs. Oh, I realized I wasn't showing the docs for the platform API, unfortunately, but you'll see it in a second. And what this lets you do is build things like this application, which is something one of our users has actually just made a few hours ago, which essentially allows you to build a V0 within Discord itself. So you can ask the V0 bot in Discord to make an announcement blog for the release of the V0 SDK. And the V0 SDK lets you integrate V0 into anything. You can build out the UI and the actual interaction that you want to expose to your user. In this case, they built a kind of preparing to generate a V0 project kind of URL. And they give you a link directly to an application that's fully built by V0 and is hosted for you. They haven't used it here, but you can also get access to the chat that backs this up. And all of that is completely available to you all via API. You can build whatever UI you want on top of it. We like to think of this as we have exposed V0 headlessly. So just like you can use headless components or headless CMS, similarly, you can now use V0 headlessly, where you don't have to use our UI and our web app. You can build your own application around it and just have access to this kind of text to app API that we've done a lot of work to perfect. Yeah, that is a few of the coolest things that we've been working on. I would love to open it up for any questions that we might have.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, talking over each other. I think the first question is just if somebody found themselves here and they don't already know what V0 is and everything it can do, what's your quick, maybe couple of sentence summary?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I probably should have started with that. V0 is an app that lets you build full stack web apps, all with natural language. So what V0 lets you do is take an idea that's something you can describe in plain English. You can give it to V0, and V0 will give you back a fully working application that implements exactly what you want. So we've seen a ton of success with people using V0 for very simple static things like landing pages, charts, graphs, slides, things like that, but also much more complicated full stack applications. Things like, build your own Calendly or Cal.com, build your own e-commerce store, build your own micro SaaS application, make your own sliders and shaders and animation tools, all using V0, all without really ever having to touch any code.
What does the backend story look like for V0? Because at that surface, I think a lot of people, when they see it, it looks more like you're generating UI. But you can actually build big backends into it too. So how does that system work?
Yeah, all V0 apps are Next.js by default. Next.js is a full stack JavaScript framework. It lets you do things both on the client and the server. If that went over your head, all that means is that V0 actually can store data, can pull things from a database, and it can do things persistently. So you don't just get this static UI that disappears when you refresh. We actually I just vibe coded an example of a full stack application using V0 for this event that we did right before this. We did an event where we had to kind of give out, we were giving out V0 credits to users who signed up. I needed a very, very quick way to be able to show users, get input from users on what are the usernames that we have to actually give credits to. And what I'll show you in a second is a V0 application that I built to do exactly that. And I'm going to share my screen again. Here we go. So this is a very, very simple application I built purely with V0. It's very, very simple. What it lets you do is submit your username to this kind of waitlist form in order to claim credits for this event that we're doing. You put in your username, you click claim credits. On your end, all you see is this kind of you're all set, and this like nice little message telling you that everything is good to go. But if we
are you using any integration for that app?
Yes, I'm going to show you in a second. But what you can see on the back end is a list of basically all the users who've submitted kind of information into this. And the way we did this is by actually using an integration. And so V0 has a bunch of kind of inbuilt integrations that just work out of the box that you don't have to create new accounts for. One of the most popular ones that we have is Supabase. Supabase lets you store data and build off very, very quickly into your applications. And so what we've done here is we've actually built an application that takes a waiting list and just submits all of this information to a Supabase backend. And then if you log in to this like admin portal, you can actually see the results of the submissions, kind of all with V0. So this took me 11 tries. I actually built this on the spot because I realized once I got to this event that we actually hadn't built this out. It took around 10 minutes, all with V0, all with vibe coding.
It looks like we have a couple of questions that just came in the chat. First is, hi team, I'm building coteach.ai, V0 for math teachers, and my main focus is currently evals, reviewing interactions, annotating issues, and developing evals for those issues to ship continuous improvements. I'm curious how the V0 team evaluate real-world utility, capabilities, and failure modes. Have you developed specific tooling or processes to increase your rate of learning?
Yeah, this is a really, really good question. The first thing is like whoever's building this, you're thinking about this exactly the right way. This is exactly how we do things on V0, which is like anytime we need to make our output better, we write a set of evals and then we hill climb against them. So basically what that means is like we will write, here are the kind of success states that we expect to work after these changes we make. We can make a bunch of changes and then just see do those tests that we've written pass or not. A very, very simple example of what evals we write are for errors that get generated. So very, very, if V0 breaks and generates code that doesn't work, you'll see an error on the screen. That's a very, very easy thing for us to track. So what we do is we have a list of like few, 100 or so prompts. Anytime we make a change to prompt or the V0 model pipeline or something like that, we will run all of those 100 prompts and then see what rate at which they error. This is actually how we built our own model pipeline. And so what this helps us with is figuring out basically, are we making changes that makes V0 more robust, that makes it more likely to generate apps that work? Very, very simple deterministic eval. There's another class of evals which are more subjective, usually require you to actually have some human in the loop. An example of these for us are aesthetics evals. It's very, very hard for us to score whether generations look better or worse. So the way we have to do this is by like doing what we call battle style evals. So you literally we built a system that lets you look at two UIs side by side over and over again, very, very fast. And the way this works is like you use different model pipelines for each of those generations. You have a human score them and say like, hey, this one is better or this one is worse. And then you use that data to determine whether we're getting better or worse. There's a lot of other different kinds of evals you can write, but I think these are just two examples of like the broad categories. One of which is automated, which is like you can deterministically calculate whether the eval is succeeding or failing. And the second is subjective, where you have a human who's actually determining is it successful or not, and then you're compiling a bunch of human scores to figure out if it's working.
So you would use those, you would use that eval pipeline, for example. So I think yesterday or the day before, Grok 4 just came out. So you would now be able to use that, your existing setup here, to test out that new model and find out, hey, is Grok 4 actually improving V0's outputs, or is it making things worse? And that's not something we should adopt and voila.
Exactly. And we can actually, like, our model pipeline is, we call it a composite model. There's a lot of different LLM calls that go into making just one V0 message succeed. This is a, if you scroll down a little bit on this, this is a great quick diagram of what that looks like. And so what we can do is we can actually switch out any parts of this entire pipeline and just test what happens. So you can think of like, we have this base model here, which is where we typically use the most frontier LLM. If Grok 4 just came out, we ran a test where we switched out the current model, frontier model we use there with Grok 4 to see how it performs on our evals. And that's a really, really easy way for us to test whether for our particular use case, which is building web apps that work and look beautiful, is a new frontier LLM doing better than what we have already?
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity. Sorry, Jacob. There's a lot of complexity in getting this right. We have some like smartest people I've ever worked with in my life type folks working on this. One thing I would throw out there is you can piggyback on the work of that team. That's why we publish the platform API and the V0 model API. So if the thing you're building is a V0 for X, I would at least experiment with building that on top of V0, because then all the changes that we make, like when a new model comes out and we run through the evals that Ari just described, if it works better, that automatically flows through to the app that you build on top of us.
So we have the 3 V0 models. There's the small, the medium, and the large. What would you say are good use cases or good reasons I might choose to use one over the other?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say if you are a beginner user to V0, you don't have to worry about this at all, actually. You should just use our default, which is V0 1.5 medium. It is the model we have spent the most time and effort working on. It is a model used by 99% of maybe 99 is a little high, maybe 90% of V0 requests. So I would say that's our default, that's our base, that's the one that's going to work the best for like any average use case. V0 small is really, really good for very, very fast edits you want to make. So if you're making a small change, you don't really need a very, very smart model to do it. You just want something that's fast and easy. Small is really, really good for that. It's also good for like text-only non-coding like questions and answers that you're doing. It has access to the same knowledge repository as like our other models. It's just faster and not as smart. But it's really, really good for like kind of Q&A use cases. And then our large model is much better for, I would not use it for things like just generating apps and things like that. It is very, very good for like complex reasoning and very, very hard problem solving. So if you have a bug that is like very, very hard to debug and like you have no idea what's going on, the large model is probably going to be better at like finding out what's actually going wrong and like coming up with a solution. It's also very good for like more complex, like harder core, hard science things that you have to do when building applications. So if you ever built like 3D, like 3JS kind of things in V0 and you need to build like better physics simulators and things like that, like large is going to be better for that.
Also for some kind of refactorizations, where you have like different large multiple files, you can use the large model for that. I think that's a great function for the large model. Yes.
Yeah, 100% agree.
The main takeaway on this is 90% of the time, the medium model is the best model. When you look at our scores, which are published in that composite model blog post, you see the medium model performs the best against most of our benchmarks. So that's really the right choice most of the time.
Yes.
What if I'm trying to build something that seems like V0 doesn't know that much about? Maybe it's a new library or a new tool. Is there any way I can add that extra context in and help V0 understand documentation or something I can use to give it better outputs?
Yeah, it's like you already have access to our roadmap. That's crazy. So that's actually one of the reasons we think at mentions is so cool. Like right now it's starting off with like you can just mention files. But what we want to build, the reason we're kind of building this is like eventually you'll be able to mention external sources as well. So it'll be something like, hey, like I'm trying to build something with the V0 platform API. Let me mention the V0 platform API docs, and then like automatically bring those into context. And that's something we're actively working on. I don't know if we have some very, very cool things in the works going on for like how we have V0 do multi-step things and do things like search the web that we're very excited for.
In the short term, a couple of things that can work well there are just uploading screenshots or uploading PDFs or just uploading the key document text, right? If you're looking at the docs and you see like, here's the 2 paragraphs that really matter, include those in the prompt. Otherwise, the models like to guess at what the documentation might say. But if you just feed it into V0, and we have a bunch of different ways today that aren't quite as easy as mentioning, which will be beautiful and will be out there in the near future, that we think can also help satisfy that same need.
Yeah, this isn't like go for it, Simon.
No. I just want to add, we have also knowledge sections on the project setting that you can also upload PDF or different information for your chat to have more context on what you are working on. I think that's okay.
If you want a really simple and fast way to do this, what I do is Command A from docs and Command V like into Command A, Command C from my docs page, literally copy everything, paste into the V0 prompt bar, and then ask your question, that will work.
Yes.
If I try to add something to that, to the system context, because I know you can upload some files there, does that add that to all prompts that go forward? Like, I guess I'm a little concerned about how that would affect my usage, any tokens I'm consuming, if I have a lot of extra information there.
So there's three ways you can do this, which I'll actually share my screen and just show you what they look like. The first is by just share. The first way you can do things is just by pasting like large text directly into the prompt bar. This is the easiest and fastest way to do things. It will only add context for that one individual message. It's not going to persist for it'll be there in your history. So for the next few messages, V0 will still know about it, but it's not something that's going to be injected into every single prompt for every message you set. The second way you can do this is by adding a project level source. Here you can upload files that are applied, that can be retrieved in any message in that project. So what this means is that it won't be injected by default into every message you send, but if V0 determines that hey, this source of information seems relevant for this particular query, it will automatically pull that into context and then use that when giving its answer. So this is really good for docs and things like that, which is something that you wanted to always be able to access, but not always be accessing. You throw it into sources here, V0 will retrieve it at will and be able to pull out the necessary parts it needs to be able to use. The final thing you can do is actually add things to custom instructions. So if you notice, when I talk to V0, V0 responds to me in all lowercase letters and with slang and kind of some Gen Z terms. That's because I like V0 to be talking to me like that. I don't like it to be very formal and professional. And the way I've done that is in my settings, I've actually set custom instructions, which these are shared among a bunch of people on our team that we all kind of use these, which is just more information about how V0 should talk to us. And it works pretty well. It's a very good way to get V0 to have a good sense of who you are as a person. It's a really good place for you to tell it what is your experience level? What are the kinds of technologies you always use? How do you want it to explain things to you? So for example, if you're a designer who doesn't know anything about code, this is a good place for you to tell V0, hey, I'm a designer. I don't know anything about code. Anytime you tell me things about code, I have no idea what's going on. There's also a good place to be hey, I'm an engineer. I can actually debug things myself. Please don't try to fix things automatically. Just tell me what's wrong and I can go into the code and fix it. Really, really easy way for you to be able to set those kinds of things up.
Okay, yeah, I have one custom instruction and it just says never use effect. And my code has been much better ever since I added that one. I guess one little feature request maybe, because a lot of websites have an llms.txt file as well that you can just go to on the site. Would we be able to add URLs to that custom system context that's in there? Because right now I think I would have to download that file and then re-upload it. If I could paste a link, that would be faster. Easier.
Yeah, that's really good feature. That's actually a really good feature request. You can't do that today. We are actively thinking about it for app mentions, so you can bring them in at will. And I would love to get a way for us to do this persistently in sources as well.
Looks like we have some more questions from the chat here. Is one of the improvements to help V0 understand new libraries, MCP support, or tools like Context 7, or more so leaning in the at web page approach?
So I haven't seen very much about Context 7. Could you repeat the first part of the question again?
MCP support. We have some cool stories to tell about that, I think, particularly with our integration partners. I'll talk about one that was really exciting to me that someone just prototyped last week. One of the common issues that people run into with using a storage provider like a Supabase or a Neon is that there's a bunch of context about what tables you have already existing in those tools that lives in those tools. And if you start a new V0 generation, it's not going to have access to that context. And so you'll see if you use these integrations in V0, we often ask you to run scripts in order to find out what exists in that table that's already in Supabase. It turns out using the Supabase MCP server, we actually are able to just grab the additional context that we need to be able to not require you to take those extra steps. And that helps us basically make these backend and full stack use cases work much more seamlessly for the user. So that's one place that we're pretty bullish on the MCP route. I think there's other cases, which Ari probably can explain in more detail about, where we think kind of arbitrarily being able to mention an LLMs.txt or a specific docs page, that might be a better paradigm. And we're definitely exploring both of those in parallel.
Yeah, I think there's two ways to think about it. One is like, how do you get information that is publicly available on the internet into V0? And the second is, how do you get information that is only privately available to you into V0? So for publicly available information, we really want to like, this is what app mentions are for. It's like anything that's just available on the internet, you should just be able to pull into V0. You can access it, so V0 should be able to access it as well. This is where like sources and app mentions and all the kind of stuff I was talking about earlier come in. The second area, which is how do I bring my private information to V0, is where like MCP servers are very useful. It's very hard for us to build out UI and functions to like get information from every possible integration you could want. Just in storage, there are like probably 350 like very good serverless database providers that we are simply not able to support all of them. So what we're going to do is like focus on making a few of them really, really good by default for folks who don't know or don't care about what's actually being done under the hood, and then make it really, really easy for you to bring your own information from like your private instances of whatever services you're using. And the way we're going to do that is, one is like today, you can already import any package from NPM. You can add environment variables for any third-party import. All that will just work. And the second will be via MCP server for some of our partners and trusted integrations. You'll be able to bring in private data directly from like MCP server that they're going to host. And that'll make it really easy for things like when you get really deep into setting up Supabase auth and you have to like reset a callback URL. This is something that's really hard. It's a very specific thing for you to do. There are 100 other things like this you might want to do that we would have to build UI and functions for. Instead, Supabase is building an MCP server that lets you do all of those. We just let you access the tools from there.
Yeah, I really like the model of not having to wait on, I guess, the V0 team to add new integrations for every possible service out there. I usually use Neon for my projects, but the other day I needed to use Terso for one, and there's no real integration for that. But I was able to set that up with just 2 little environment variables, and everything just connected. And the backend worked pretty seamlessly there. So that was
That's
really
awesome.
cool.
That's what we want to enable.
You had mentioned with the V0 platform API, you showed a little bit about that. Does that have access to any of this extra context or any extra information about like any documentation, anything else you want to include there in the chats that the platform API creates? Are you able to take advantage of that, or is that maybe on the roadmap?
Yes, 100%. So you can, when you call create chat from the platform API, you can pass attachments. So the same thing you do when you paste an attachment into a message, you can just do that by passing something into our attachments array. This is just an input into the create chat function. The second thing you can do is, because these are all backed by V0 projects and chats, using the platform API, you can create a chat in a particular project. So it can have all the sources and information available in that project by default. And so what we've seen very successfully is some of our partners, our early design partners who are building things with the platform API, they will create a project that has sources on whatever it is that they want to help their users build. This is usually bespoke, very specific to whatever it is that they're building the V0 for. And then all the chats that they create are created in that project. So they come in with all that kind of source knowledge by default, and they get the benefit of like, it gets retrieved from sources when necessary. They don't need to pay for tokens every single time. All of that kind of just works out of the box today.
Amazing.
Another question from the chat. What's the long play for V0? Are we expecting it to power small indie projects like the Discord bot that you showed, or bigger things? Kind of what's the spectrum that you're looking to cover?
Yeah, I think there's 2 areas we're really, really excited about. The first is making prototyping and ideation really, really fast. V0 is a great tool for teams to collaborate on and just get their ideas from their head into something that people can comment on and start building on. This happens at Vercel all the time. Every PRD I write now has V0 mocks along with it. Our designer gets V0 mocks from me every single time I have a feature idea that she goes and builds better V0 designs for. And so that's one area we're really, really excited about. The second area we're really excited about is like just allowing you to build full stack applications really, really fast. A ton of people build micro SaaS applications on V0 every single day. We want to make that really, really easy for them. And I think Zeb can talk a little bit more about like, what does V0 look like 5 years from now? What does it look like 10 years from now? Things like that.
Yeah. My hot take is that anybody who's trying to forecast what AI's tools look like 5 years from now is completely out of their mind, because I mean, even what we thought about 6 months ago was just wrong, right? Like this market and landscape is changing so quickly that anything beyond 6 months into the future is a wish and a prayer more than a plan. I think the micro SaaS or the like just build a tool for a problem that I have, like Ari's example of, hey, I showed up this event and we didn't actually have a way to like figure out how to give everybody credits. So I just built it in 5 minutes. Or the other day, I'm basically building an extension on my house and I wanted to play around with different designs and like how would the various sizes and layouts work. And all the tools for this are terrible. They're like software built in the 90s. So I just built my own little tool to like drag and drop the different things I wanted and resize them and try different dimensions of the space. And that took me like 8 minutes to set up. And my dad and I have just been like riffing on it overnight. So these kind of like very easy to build full stack apps, at least for the next couple months. Like that's an area that we're super excited in. And then as Ari said, that the prototyping for bigger companies, they just are used to like very slow ways of working where a PM writes a doc for 2 weeks and then a designer works on it for a while. With V0, they've realized like everybody can get in a room and just hack together on like actually building the thing and then come out of that room with like a very clear example of this is exactly what we want and all parties are excited about it. And that just lets them move from this idea into like actually shipping code in hours or days instead of like a typical 6-week cycle.
Yeah, I love personalized software as a use case. It's been great to just spin up any little thing where I'm like, oh, I wish there was like a calculator for this, and you can make that custom calculator in like just a couple minutes.
Or I want this thing to actually look beautiful. Like I see so many bad charts and then I just export the data and put it in V0 and then I have it look like a chart that I actually want to engage with. And then when I want to ask deeper questions like, hey, you have this weekly and I really care about it hourly or daily, I can just ask the model and it like makes those changes. That is, it has brought me a lot of joy. It's so much more joyful to work with. Than,
if we want to talk about V0 for slide presentations or chats, we should make a new one because there is like a lot of use case for that.
Every single chart you've ever seen posted on the V0 Twitter was built by V0 because I am incapable of using a design tool to build like marketing charts. Yeah. So everything you've seen in there is built by V0. Every time we do a slide presentation anywhere these days, the slides are made by V0. You realize that
slides
actually, like,
that go. Yeah.
I was saying like software, like you realize everything is software at the end of the day. Like the things that you view as like static representations, like, you know, charts and slides and these kinds of things, it's all software. It all can be built as a web app. And in fact, these days it's actually faster to build it as a web app sometimes than it is to like go into Google Slides and configure 800 different themes and like move things around and like who's going to do that?
I build the slides for our board meetings in V0. It's just like, it's the best tool to use. It's amazing.
We have another question from the chat. This is about the roadmap and planning. I love this question. How has V0's unique nature as an AI-first product shaped your development lifecycle? And do you have any processes that stand out compared to other teams, even within Vercel? Yeah,
that's a really good question. I would say there's like two big parts to this. One is we ship like ridiculously fast. If you are following our Twitter or if you just follow the rate of change in the product, that is enabled by AI. It's enabled by V0 and a bunch of other AI tools that everyone on the team uses. The average amount of code that an engineer on the V0 team ships, I'm sure is like way above average just because of the fact that like AI makes that really, really easy. The second like process kind of change that happens for us is that ideas come from everywhere. It's very frequent that like we'll get ideas from candidates, from our CEO, from designers, from HR, from sales, from SEs, like anywhere at Vercel, like anyone can have an idea for a feature that should be built into V0. They will share a design, a V0 generation basically of what that feature should look like or what it is that they want. And that's a really, really easy way for us to have a very clear understanding of like what is the ask, like what is the problem, what does the solution look like? And it's way faster than what we would typically do, which is create a Slack thread, have 800 messages be sent in it where people are just like arguing about, they're kind of on the same page, but like are unable to find the words to express that they're on the same page. It's very easy to be like, that V0 generation, yes, approved. Like, let's ship that. Or like, no, you should not ship that. Here's a fork. Here's the version I think we should ship, which is way better than just like, this is bad or this is good. It really helps anybody give feedback and anyone have product ideas.
How much do you use V0 for when building V0? Is it just for prototypes like that, for ideas and drafting, or do you use it more actively in the development to output code that makes it into the final project? How does that process work for your team?
I think Esteban can also answer this question. For me, we build a ton of prototypes of V0 in V0. Actually, here I can show another cool example of we actually have a fully working V0 in V0 that we use to prototype just like different interactions on the product. A recent change, it's about a month ago now, I say, is like how our sidebar works changed relatively recently. And what we did is, what our designer did is she actually built a, V0 generation that mocked what this interaction should look like. So what this means is like on the home page, we have a sidebar that's open by default and can be closed. But on an individual chat page, the sidebar actually like appears as an overlay just by you like moving your cursor towards the edge of the screen, and then disappears when you move away from it. And this is actually what we ended up implementing in V0. So what you'll see is if I go to the end of the screen, it actually does pop out. And on the like main homepage, it's a toggleable design. So that's one example of like prototyping that we do in V0. Our designers and design engineers work a ton in V0 to like prototype what interactions and what like layout of our application should look like. Other things I personally do in V0 is like all of my analytics queries are written by V0. So we have a project that has access to our analytics schema. You can see people on our team just ask it to write SQL queries. And then the third thing we do is like asking engineering questions is actually very, very good to do in V0. So if you have a question about like, oh, should I be using an effect here? Like, should I be, like, how would I use Jotai to like move this SWR hook? Like things that are very front-end specific, like very Next.js specific. Like those are really, really good things to ask V0 to like, if you're doing the right thing. So here's an example quickly of a, oh, actually this is not gonna, sorry. It's not gonna show the screen, but basically I use it very frequently to ask if I have written a use effect that's necessary or not. It's almost always not necessary. And V0 is really good at telling me like, you're dumb and you shouldn't have written a use effect here. Here's a better way to implement that. Esteban, I don't know if you have other ways that you've seen it be very useful in your work.
Yeah, I make work. I mean, I love to use it to create, to build in public. So I have like a personal challenge of building one entire full stack app per week. So I posted some of them on Twitter, on X. So I think 2 weeks ago, we created a DocuSign-like app. So you can upload PDF, sign in, and then send it to be signed. This week, I just launched a booking calendar app. So you can create customized events, availability slots, and share that link with other friends, and they can schedule calls through that app. And I think that's incredible because basically I built entirely that full stack app in roughly 10 hours, just using V0. I didn't write a single line of code. I didn't use Cursor or Cloud Code to fix some errors. It was entirely built using V0. I think that's very great use case, actually. And one important commentary about that is like all these apps, all these full stack apps are available in our community. So if you go to our community and look for, let's say, this calendar app, so you can put V0 calendar, you can fork it and make it your own. So you can customize it, you can create your own version of that calendar. So that's, feel free to to fork it, open in V0, and make it your own. I think it's doing that right now.
How do I get my own pages on that in that community? If I want to like publish my own templates, or if I want to share those around, what's the process for that?
That's a great question. So you can go to settings. Let me share screen very quickly. Share screen. Share screen. So you can go here, project settings, and you have like a one little tab that says community. So if you mark this toggle, it's going to be after you activate that toggle and you deploy the project, it's going to be published in our V0 community section. So we have like an approval process, obviously, to be sure that the code is secure. That's it.
Well,
what if I want to build something, but I don't have my laptop? Like maybe I'm, I don't know, sitting at the DMV or something. Do we have a mobile app coming?
You should try V0 on mobile web. I mean, I think most of us who get stuck in, waiting at the DMV or in a taxi ride or whatever, their like default is I'm going to build an app. And I think the mobile web experience, there's some design changes that could make it a little more intuitive, which we will ship shortly. But don't wait for a mobile app. Just go to v0.dev on your phone and it works pretty well.
Nice.
We have
somebody asking about, sorry, talking over you again, Jacob. Yeah, we have another question. This one's about the AI bill. They say V0's AI bill must be insane. There's a clear business incentive to reduce this cost. At the same time, using a smarter model and more context almost always increases UX. So how do you approach this paradox, and how much engineering time do you devote to cost reduction?
It's a really good question. I'll answer that first, and then Ari probably could talk more about the actual model pipeline side. So a couple principles we have for this. The first is that like by far the most important thing is to have the best experience for our users and help them build amazing full stack apps very easily. And so what that means is like if we're going to bias towards make something less expensive to us or make something a better experience, we're going to go towards the better experience every time. And what that means is, to your point, our AI bill is very large, which our CFO gets upset with me about. And then Guillermo and me and the team just do it anyways, because it's the right thing to do for our users. The other side is like how we think about sharing that cost with our users. And I know like there've been a lot of questions about our pricing model and everything. And I think we got to a place we feel pretty confident is the right model. And it's one we're seeing a lot of folks like a Cursor, et cetera, get to as well, which is basically tokens. We charge you what our tokens cost us, more or less, right? And so we don't think that long-term there's going to be a defensible business to build where you make tokens cost way more than everybody else. Tokens are kind of a commodity. And to that end, we're always aiming to like reduce the number of tokens. Like we're working on some prompt caching stuff that will actually take the average charge for a V0 generation, especially ones deeper into a message or like a chat, that should reduce that. And that will actually reduce our costs. And then we will immediately, because of the way our pricing works, pass that cost reduction onto our users. And that's kind of the paradigm that we think makes the most sense, given how expensive our AI bills are. And what we hear from you is like, hey, it's too expensive for us too, right? And it's just, unfortunately, these LLMs today, the small model's cheaper, but most of them are fairly expensive both to us. And then because we pass that along to you guys as well.
Yeah, and I think the way we think about this and like when we build out our model pipeline is that we actually don't care as much about making things cheaper. We do care a lot about making things faster. It turns out cheap and fast are relatively correlated, right? Like cheap models are usually very, very fast. Their time to first token and tokens per second are usually way faster. And that's usually because they're not as smart, right? They're not doing as much reasoning work beforehand. So we always try to think about like, where do we really need intelligence? Like, where do we need the smartest model to be doing the work? How can we make that like the work that the smartest model does the highest leverage work possible? And then have a like army of small, cheap, fast model drones that like go off and do like the execution work. And the reason we think about it like that is like, A, it is cheaper for us and you, right? It's like, wait, those tokens are cheaper for you. And it's also faster, right? Like we care a lot about making V0's experience very fast. Like making sure you get a response as fast as possible so that you can iterate very quickly. And if we can move more of the work to smaller, faster models, you'll get faster results. You'll be able to iterate faster. And we think that that is actually like the best user experience.
Cool, cool. Looks like we've got about 5 more minutes left there, so we'll just a couple of questions left. One thing I'm curious about are collaboration features. Is it possible for multiple people to work together in the same chat or as a team? What does that process look like?
Yeah, this is a top priority for us actually right now, which is like, how do we make collaboration in V0 as easy as possible? Right now, you can have multiple people on a team work on the same chat. So you can set your chat to be visible, shared with your entire team, and editable by anyone on your team. And this means like multiple people can be working in a chat at once. We've just shipped synchronized streaming. So when multiple people chat, they'll have streams that are synchronized. They'll know when messages are being sent by other users and all of that good stuff. We're working on making sharing individual chats with members of your team much, much easier. And also making like role-based access control like the default for team plans. And what this will mean is like you'll have much better control within V0 itself to share with other members in your team and collaborate very, very fast. Right now, the way you do that is like you find the link, you make this chat editable by your team, and then send that link in whatever like medium you're comfortable with. What we're going to move to is like you can go into like the shareability settings in a chat in V0, see all your team members right there, pick the ones you want to share with, and we'll send them emails that say, hey, you were just invited to this chat to collaborate. Do you want to work on this with your teammates? Basically moving towards a collaboration model that's much more similar to what you expect from Figma or from Google Docs, instead of the one player first mode that we have today.
One of the things we're really excited about there is actually an idea. I think I saw it in the community recently, which is folks wanting commenting a la Google Docs, right? And so if Ari shares something to me and I say, that's interesting, but these 2 pieces are strange. Today I have to like send that to him as a Slack message or whatever it might be, record him a voice note. But I would love to just be able to like click on the component like I can in design mode and then just leave a comment around it, right? So those are some of the things in this like multiplayer and collaborative first V0 vision we're trying to get towards that we're really excited about.
Is there any place that you recommend people go for like documentation and tutorials? Is that kind of spread out, or is there like one place that you recommend people go?
Yeah, we have our brand new documentation section. You can go to v0.dev/docs. So there's like a bunch of documentation that you can read. And also I strongly recommend you to, if you are new for V0, but also if you have been using V0 for a long time and maybe you haven't explored it yet, go to our community section, check it out, the starters, explore the code that other people wrote, clone it, fork it, play with that. I think it's a good way to learn to use V0.
Awesome.
And I guess this kind of final question here. What's coming next? Do you have any new upcoming features? What are you most excited about coming next on the roadmap?
People wants to know, guys.
All right, I'll give that to you.
I will tease the feature I was talking about earlier, which I promised myself at the beginning I wouldn't talk about, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. One of the things in V0, like as people do more and more complex things in V0, we found that it's actually very hard for V0 to get things right on the first try. This is also true for developers, right? Like when you build an application, if you are willing to basically write code and then say like, okay, I'm going to just push this to production and immediately deploy without actually looking at a preview and modifying, editing things, I would be like, you're crazy. Like that's a crazy workflow. But suddenly like that's what we expect of LLMs, where it's like, I expect the LLM, when I give it a prompt, to build an application I can just deploy immediately in one step. What we're moving towards is a more agentic model for V0. And what this means is that V0 will be able to take multiple steps in succession that actually help you build more complex things. And so what this will look like is when I ask, hey, can you build me a full stack application with auth that has dashboards and pulls data from my database and publishes it to this like third-party source, and I can import and download the data as CSV. Instead of trying to do that all at once, which is what V0 does today, what V0 will do instead is first create a to-do list of like all the steps it needs to actually take to actually get to this conclusion. It will then go like, okay, let me go search the necessary docs sites that I need to do to actually be able to get the information I need to build this. Okay, now let me take the first step here, which is like, let me scaffold out an Next.js application. Then it'll take the next step, which is like, okay, let's build a dashboard. Then it'll take the next, which is like, now let's add Shippa-based storage. Like, let's make sure this dashboard has run functionality for adding and deleting and updating rows, and then go on from there. And in our early tests of this kind of model, it's way, way more successful at doing harder things. And so I think that is the thing I'm most excited for, where we're going to try to make V0 be able to do more complex things by default much faster and much better.
Awesome. Esteban,
No,
Seth, do you have
that's like-
anything else you want to add?
No, I think
That's the note to end on.
All right.
Do you want more?
Thank you,
than
guys.
that?
I appreciate you taking the time to join us, and I know you have to get back to your day. You got lots to do, so really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. And thank you, everyone else who joined us as well. We have another community session coming up on Tuesday, July 22nd. We're going to have Christopher Burns here to show us how consent.io is transforming privacy consent from a compliance checkbox into a fully observable system. And you can find the whole list of upcoming events at community.vercel.com/events. And until next time, we'll see you around the community.